What if I told you that one of the most overlooked 5-cent coins in America could be hiding a story worth an unbelievable fortune? Most people see an old Monticello nickel and immediately spend it, toss it into a jar, or forget about it completely. But today, we're exposing 3 ultra-rare and highly valuable Monticello 5-cent coins that every serious collector needs to know about. And believe me, the final coin is going to make you look at old nickels completely differently. So before you spend another 5-cent coin, check it, because the tiny details we're about to reveal could turn an ordinary-looking nickel into a hidden American treasure. Welcome back to Hidden Coin Millions. We bring you fresh, rare coin discoveries every single day. Let's uncover the first treasure. First up, and now, we're opening this countdown with a coin that looks innocent enough to fool almost anyone. Take a look at the date, 1952. Then, look for the tiny detail that many people completely overlook, the missing mint mark. That's right. This Monticello 5-cent has no mint mark, along with the brown dot appearance and the fine condition you've described. To an ordinary person, it may look like nothing more than an old nickel that has been sitting around for decades. But for a serious collector, this is exactly where the investigation begins. Because when you discover an old Jefferson nickel, you don't simply look at the number 5 stamped on it. You look at the date. You inspect the mint information. You study the surfaces. You examine the strike. And you look closely at Monticello. That tiny 5-cent piece can tell an enormous story. The 1952 Jefferson nickel belongs to the classic Jefferson 5-cent series, created by designer Felix Schlag. The obverse carries the portrait of Thomas Jefferson, while the reverse features his famous Virginia estate, Monticello. The design had already become a familiar part of American life by the early 1950s, and millions of Americans handled these coins every day. But here's what makes old coins so exciting. When they were released, nobody knew which examples would survive in remarkable condition. Some disappeared into circulation. Some were damaged. Some were lost. Some were placed into old coin jars and forgotten. And some survived with characteristics that collectors would later examine extremely closely. The 1952 Philadelphia Jefferson nickel was struck in the traditional 75% copper and 25% nickel composition, with a weight of approximately 5 grams, a diameter of about 21.2 millimeters, and a plain edge. Records a mintage of 63,988,000 for the Philadelphia issue. That means something important. The date alone does not automatically make every 1952 nickel extraordinarily rare. The real excitement comes from the individual coin. And that's where your described example gets interesting. You have a 1952 nickel with no mint mark, a naturally aged brown dot appearance and fine condition. Those surface characteristics give the coin a distinctive vintage look, but collectors know that color or spots alone don't establish rarity. They examine the complete coin, its originality, wear, strike, surface preservation, lettering, date, and reverse details. And there is one area you absolutely want to inspect. Monticello. Turn that coin over. Look closely at the building. Study the windows. Examine the steps. Check the lettering. Look around the rim. Because Jefferson nickel collectors have long paid special attention to the quality of the Monticello strike. PCGS specifically notes that examples with full steps characteristics can command a significant premium, even though the ordinary 1952 Philadelphia issue itself is common. That's the kind of tiny detail that can turn a casual coin search into a serious collector investigation. And this is why you should never rush when checking an old nickel. Don't clean it. Don't polish it. Don't scrape those brown spots away. Don't try to make the coin look newer. If the surface is original, preserving it is far more important than trying to make an 80-year-old coin look shiny. Instead, handle it carefully. Photograph both sides, compare the date and mint details, and if the coin appears exceptional, have it examined by a reputable professional or recognized grading service. Because when you're dealing with an extraordinary valuation claim, authentication isn't optional. It's essential. Now we're approaching the moment you've been waiting for. For the 1952 Monticello 5 cent, with no mint mark, brown dot appearance, and fine condition described for this video, the value you supplied is $264,300. That's an enormous number for a 5-cent coin. And that's exactly why a claimed value at this level should always be independently authenticated and supported by actual market evidence before anyone treats it as a confirmed sale price. But imagine discovering a coin like this in an old collection. Imagine opening a forgotten box. Imagine turning over an ordinary-looking nickel. You see the date. You see the familiar portrait of Jefferson. You flip it over. You notice Monticello. And suddenly you realize that the little coin you've been holding deserves a much closer examination. That's the emotion behind the hunt. It's not simply about finding an old coin. It's about finding the right old coin, the right date, the right characteristics, the right condition, the right strike, and the right authentication. That's what separates serious collecting from simply accumulating change. So here's my advice for every collector watching Hidden Coin Millions. Never judge an old Jefferson nickel by its size. A 5-cent coin can carry more than metal. It can carry American history. It can carry decades of circulation. It can carry a story passed from one generation to another. And in exceptional circumstances, it can become a highly desirable collector piece. So the next time an old Monticello nickel lands in your hand, stop for a second. Don't spend it automatically. Turn it over. Look at the date. Look for the mint mark. Study those Monticello details. And give that tiny piece of American history the attention it deserves. Because here at Hidden Coin Millions, we're bringing you fresh, rare coin discoveries and new videos every single day. And remember this, the greatest treasure doesn't always look like treasure. Sometimes it's small enough to disappear into the palm of your hand. Sometimes it's been sitting unnoticed for decades. And sometimes all it takes is one careful look to realize you've found something worth investigating. Stay with us, because the hunt for hidden American coin treasures never stops. Next up, we are talking about a 1955 with D Monticello 5 cent. Carrying the D mint mark and showing those distinctive gray dots across its aged surface. At first glance, you might think this is simply another old Jefferson nickel that has survived for decades. But stop right there, because when a vintage coin combines an important date, a recognizable mint mark, an attractive aged appearance, and the right level of preservation, collectors start looking at it very differently. Imagine this little 5-cent piece leaving the Denver Mint in 1955, entering American commerce during an era when coins were handled constantly and rarely treated like collectibles. It could have passed through countless hands, sat inside cash registers, traveled through stores and businesses, and disappeared into someone's collection without anyone realizing what they had. More than 7 decades later, that history is exactly what gives an old Jefferson nickel its incredible character. The Jefferson nickel series began in 1938, after the Buffalo nickel was replaced. An artist, Felix Schlag, created the famous design featuring Thomas Jefferson on the obverse and his Virginia home, Monticello, on the reverse. That classic Monticello design remained remarkably consistent for decades. And here's something important about this 1955 with D example. This is a regular post-war Jefferson nickel, not one of the famous wartime silver nickels. After World War II, the mint returned to the traditional nickel composition in 1946. The standard alloy consisted of 75% copper and 25% nickel, with a weight of approximately 5 grams, a diameter around 21.2 millimeters, and a plain edge. Now turn your attention to that tiny D. That single letter is the fingerprint of the Denver Mint on this coin. For Jefferson nickels of this era, the mint mark appeared on the reverse beside Monticello. That means when you're checking an old nickel, you shouldn't just stare at Jefferson's portrait and the date. Flip it over and inspect the area around Monticello carefully. That tiny letter can completely change the identity of the coin you're holding. But the real excitement comes from the overall appearance. The grey dots and aged surface on this particular example give it a distinctive vintage character. Collectors examine these surfaces closely because natural toning, original texture, strike quality, wear, and preservation all contribute to the appeal of an older coin. They also look carefully at Jefferson's portrait, the lettering, the rim, the Monticello building, and especially the sharpness of the reverse details. And there is another feature serious Jefferson nickel collectors pay close attention to: the steps of Monticello. Those tiny architectural details can become extremely important when evaluating high-quality Jefferson nickels. A strong strike can preserve details that disappeared almost immediately on heavily circulated examples. Collectors searching for superior specimens often examine the reverse under magnification, looking for unusually complete and well-defined details. That is one reason condition can dramatically change collector interest in this series. So when you find an old 1955 with D, don't immediately toss it back into circulation. Look at the date. Look for the D. Study the surface. Examine the Monticello steps. Check the lettering. And most importantly, protect the coin before doing anything that could damage its original surface. Now we reach the moment that can make your jaw drop. For the 1955 with D Monticello 5 cent, in the almost condition described here, the current market value you provided is $284,500. Yes, $284,500. That is an extraordinary figure for a tiny 5-cent coin, turning what looks like ordinary pocket change into something that can represent a truly enormous collector treasure. The value you supplied is for the specific coin condition you described, and I'm giving this figure only once right here. But remember something very important. A coin's actual sale price can vary substantially depending on authentication, grading, provenance, strike quality, surface originality, eye appeal, and the exact characteristics of the individual specimen. So, if you believe you've discovered a coin matching these details, don't clean it, polish it, scrape it, or attempt to improve its appearance. Original surfaces are part of a collectible coin's identity, and careless handling can destroy the very qualities collectors want to preserve. For collectors, this is where the hunt becomes addictive, because you aren't just looking for an old nickel. You're looking for the right date, the right mint mark, the right surface, the right preservation, and the right combination of characteristics that makes a forgotten coin suddenly command serious attention. Think about that for a second. Somewhere in America, old Jefferson nickels are still sitting inside inherited collections, forgotten jars, old coin folders, drawers, boxes, and accumulations that haven't been examined carefully in years. Most people see 5 cents. A dedicated collector sees a piece of American history waiting to be investigated. And if you ever encounter a 1955 with D Monticello 5 cent that appears unusually well preserved, take your time. Photograph both sides Keep it safely protected and consider having it examined by a reputable professional or recognized grading service before assuming anything about its value. Never underestimate the smallest details, because sometimes the difference between an ordinary-looking old nickel and a collector's dream isn't the size of the coin. It's one tiny letter, one unusual surface, one remarkable strike, one surviving example, and one person who actually stopped to look. This is exactly why the treasure hunt never ends here at Hidden Coin Millions. We bring you fresh, rare coin discoveries and new videos every single day, because the next incredible find could be hiding somewhere you would never expect. Next up, take a close look at the date, 1940. This isn't a modern nickel. This is a coin that comes from the earliest era of the Jefferson nickel series, a piece of American history that has been surviving for more than 8 decades. And when you add the no mint mark, the beautiful grey dot appearance, and the very fine condition you've described, this coin becomes an especially fascinating piece for collectors to investigate. Imagine this nickel entering American commerce in 1940. The United States was standing at the edge of one of the most consequential periods in its history. Americans were using coins every day without imagining that some of those ordinary 5-cent pieces would eventually become objects of serious collector attention. Back then, nobody knew which coins would survive in remarkable condition. Nobody knew which pieces would disappear into collections. And nobody knew which forgotten nickel might one day become the centerpiece of an incredible collection. That's what makes old coins so exciting. The 1940 Jefferson nickel belongs to the early Jefferson 5-cent series designed by Felix Schlag. The obverse features the familiar portrait of Thomas Jefferson, while the reverse presents Monticello, Jefferson's historic Virginia home. The design established one of the most recognizable images in American coinage and would remain a defining part of the Jefferson nickel series. And now here's the detail you absolutely need to understand. This particular coin has no mint mark. That doesn't mean the coin is missing something. It means the coin was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, where regular issue Jefferson nickels of this period were produced without a mint mark. The 1940 Philadelphia issue had a recorded mintage of 485,000 pieces, so the date by itself does not make every example extraordinarily rare. What makes individual survivors interesting to collectors is the combination of condition, strike, surfaces, varieties, and overall preservation. Now look at the composition. This wasn't one of the wartime silver alloy nickels that came later. The regular 1940 Jefferson nickel was made from the traditional 75% copper and 25% nickel composition. It weighs about 5 grams, measures approximately 21.2 millimeters, and has a plain edge. That means when you hold one in your hand, you're holding a small piece of the classic American 5-cent series in its original copper-nickel form. But here's where your eyes should become extremely careful. You mentioned the coin has gray dots and a beautiful look. Those surface characteristics can make an old coin visually fascinating, but collectors don't judge a valuable coin simply because it looks old. They examine the entire piece. They look at Jefferson's portrait, the lettering, the rim, the date, the reverse design, the Monticello details, the amount of wear, and the originality of the surfaces. And on a Jefferson nickel, the reverse deserves special attention. Look carefully at Monticello. Look at the building. Look at the windows. Look at the steps. Look at the lettering. Look at the overall sharpness. Those details can tell you much more about the coin's condition than simply looking at its color. A coin described as very fine should show substantial design detail while also displaying evidence of circulation. That makes careful examination extremely important. The difference between a genuinely attractive circulated example and a much higher-grade specimen can be enormous in the professional coin market. And this is where the treasure hunt becomes exciting. Because when you find an old nickel, you shouldn't immediately decide that its story is finished. You should investigate it. You should identify the date. You should determine whether a mint mark is present. You should examine both sides under good lighting. And if the coin appears exceptional, you should have it professionally authenticated and graded rather than trying to clean or improve it yourself. Never polish an old coin. Never scrape its surface. Never use household chemicals to make it look brighter. A beautiful original surface is part of the coin's history, and careless cleaning can permanently damage collectible value. Now, let's arrive at the moment you've been waiting for. For the 1940 Monticello 5 cent, no mint mark, grey dot appearance, beautiful look, and very fine condition described for this video, the value supplied for this coin is $388,600. That's an enormous figure, and if a coin is ever claimed to be worth anything remotely close to that amount, professional authentication and an independent valuation are absolutely essential before treating the number as a confirmed market price. The key lesson is simple. Don't let the tiny size fool you. A nickel can carry history. A nickel can carry rarity. A nickel can carry collector demand. And a nickel can become a fascinating discovery when the right combination of date, condition, strike, surface, and authentication comes together. So if you have an old collection sitting somewhere in your home, don't rush past those Jefferson nickels. Open the box. Look through the old folders. Check the dates. Turn every coin over. And pay attention to those tiny details that most people completely ignore. Because that's what collecting is really about. It's the thrill of discovery. It's the possibility that something ordinary-looking has a story nobody noticed. And it's the excitement of finding a piece of American history that has survived generation after generation. Here at Hidden Coin Millions, we're bringing you fresh, rare coin videos and new discoveries every single day. So, if you love the hunt for unusual American coins, stay connected, because today's forgotten nickel could be tomorrow's fascinating collector discovery. And after seeing these 3 Monticello 5 cent coins, remember one thing. Never underestimate the little coins hiding in plain sight. The biggest treasures don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they simply sit quietly in your hand, waiting for someone to look closely enough.